And it looked like ESPN just told the shocking truth as to why Sandy Brondello was let go by the New York Liberty. Guys, for this one,
ESPN just dropped a bombshell on Sandy Brondello's firing, and fans are stunned. The Liberty's winningest coach, fresh off a championship, suddenly pushed out the door. And now the truth is out. The reasons are as shocking as they are messy. And this twist reshapes everything about the WNBA's future.
New York Liberty have let go Sandy Brondello. Well, in their terms, they will not renew her contract. In our eyes, they parted ways. She was fired, essentially. But not as bad as being fired, I guess. But that's just how we talk out here. Nonetheless, I'm shocked. She's been a coach there for 4 seasons. You look at the past 3 seasons, she made it to the finals in her 2nd season. She won the finals in her 3rd season, and they lost in round 1 this year. Outside looking in, you look at this franchise and you see that's a successful franchise. New York is a powerhouse in the W right now. So what is the issue? What is the front office?
The headline hits. And ESPN is the one carrying the torch. Sandy Brondello, the Liberty's most successful coach, gone just a year after bringing home a championship. Fans blink, thinking it's a typo. But no, this is real. The WNBA reminding everyone how cutthroat front offices get when power and ego take over. So let's unpack what ESPN uncovered. Because this isn't just hoops. It's politics, pressure, and a franchise trying to outgrow the league itself. ESPN says this wasn't about one playoff slip. It had been simmering for a while. Truth is, Brondello might have been gone last year if not for that title. Championship or bust, literally.
Title, what exactly led to the parting of ways between the Liberty and Sandy Brondello here?
Well, Malika, I know you guys talk about this a lot in the NBA and in other sports, but it was really championship or bust for New York and for Sandy Brondello. And in fact, if they hadn't won the championship last year, we might have been having this conversation a year ago, which is maybe a little startling to fans outside given how, excuse me for those noises, for how impactful she'd been for that franchise. But that is how bullish this organization is in New York and how their ownership and management really are looking to.
The Liberty front office has been called bullish. Translation: Wall Street owners who think sports run like their stock portfolios. If numbers don't look perfect, dump the asset and buy a new one. No patience for the long game. They crave dominance every second. And if you can't deliver on command, they'll replace you with someone they think can. But here's where it flips. Brondello wasn't just winning. She was doing it while fighting problems out of her control. Playoff injuries, players not fully healthy, a roster with thin depth. Yet she still coached them into the finals and even won it all. And still, somehow, the front office spun that into a negative.
And so I think for New York moving forward, I would expect them to really, again, be bullish in who they go after. We know that they are a WNBA franchise that invests a lot in a lot of resources, a lot of financial, capital into these decisions. So I think it wouldn't be shocking, though, if they decide to go after maybe someone in the NBA, someone that we might be a little bit more of a non-traditional hire. I do think Sandy Brondello has a great shot of getting hired again. We know what she has done in this league. We know that there's openings in Seattle, for example.
According to ESPN's insider Alexa, the decision was cold and simple. Management had already drawn the line before the playoffs even tipped off. It was title or else. Translation: if New York didn't run it back with a 2nd straight championship, Sandy was done. Let that sink in. A coach who just delivered the first trophy in franchise history wasn't judged on building a culture or keeping stars bought in or even overcoming adversity. She was judged on perfection, nothing less.
ESPN to give us an update as to why Sandy Brondello will let go. And what's crazy about all of this in this interview that I'm about to show you guys is that Sandy Brondello was supposed to be fired last year, but she actually won the WNBA championship.
New York Liberty just fired their head coach, and fans are left scratching their heads. They won the championship, last year. They made the playoffs this year. But in sports, when things don't go as planned, someone always takes the fall. In New York, the standard has been pushed sky high. Just ask Coach Tibbs with the Knicks. Making the playoffs doesn't protect you anymore. The message is loud. Playoffs aren't enough. We want the finals. We want the trophy. And if it's not the roster getting shaken up, the axe usually falls on the coaching staff. Sadly, this time, it was Sandy. Yes, the same Sandy who delivered the Liberty their very first championship. Her reward, being judged on whether she could repeat history instantly. The bar was raised so ridiculously high, failure was almost baked in. Meanwhile, other teams would kill to have her resume. 40 playoff wins, titles with multiple franchises, and the rare ability to earn players' trust without becoming a tyrant. But in New York, that resume gets a shrug and a cold. Thanks, but we're moving on. It's like firing a chef right after he earns you your first Michelin star, because garnish on plate 6 wasn't Instagram ready. And the way it was done, brutal. No long goodbye, no heartfelt send-off. ESPN spelled it out. Just a quick announcement. A hollow thanks for your service, and then talk of replacements. Cold as ice. But here's why this stings beyond one coach. It exposes the WNBA's strange obsession with mimicking the NBA's headline-grabbing drama without actually having the infrastructure to back it up. The Liberty are acting like the Lakers firing a coach for not pulling off a three-peat. Newsflash, you're not. You're still in a league clawing for market share, still trying to convince casual fans that stars like Caitlin Clark are worth tuning in for. What the league needs right now is stability, not chaos.
We just fired their head coach. People are confused as to why, because they won the championship last year, they made the playoffs this year. In sports, there's always a scapegoat when things aren't going the way that they wanted it to go. Clearly, in New York, the standard has been raised. As Coach Tibbs learned with the New York Knicks, making the playoffs does not guarantee that you are safe anymore. They have raised the standard. They're sending a message to the fans, to the team, saying, we don't want to just go to the playoffs. We need to go to the finals and we need to win. So if it's not the players on the court that are changing, it's got to be the coaching staff.
And speaking of Caitlin Clark, here's where the connection gets impossible to ignore. Clark has already shifted the entire power balance of the WNBA. She's in year 2 now, not just the rookie hype machine, but the undeniable face of the league. Every move she makes gets amplified. So when someone like Sandy Brondello openly praises her or acknowledges her influence, it shakes the old guard. Suddenly, politics about who gets the spotlight matter more than wins and losses. That's the undercurrent ESPN hinted at, but never fully spelled out. Brondello's honesty in recognizing Caitlin's cultural impact didn't sit well with certain corners of the league. Because in New York, the branding push is clear. They want Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu as the untouchable faces of the franchise, maybe even the league itself. A coach giving Caitlin that level of credit, that doesn't fit the Liberty's "we are the center of the universe" narrative. And here's where it gets spicy. Breanna Stewart is on a 1-year deal, meaning she could walk away. Imagine that.
As for the All-Star, I'm excited to get to know her a little bit. I think that's the part of the start. Coach plays and coaching the board, get them to know a little bit, and enjoy the whole celebration.
The Liberty just fired their championship coach to prove some strange point. And in the process, they may have alienated the very star who gave them credibility. ESPN even floated the possibility that Breanna Stewart could walk. And if that happens, New York doesn't just stumble, they collapse straight into a rebuild. That's the gamble the front office is making. And honestly, it's insane. Around the league, the reaction has been loud. Becky Hammon didn't sugarcoat it. She flat out said she hated the move. And that matters. When one of the most respected coaches in basketball calls your decision trash without literally saying trash, maybe it's time to rethink your strategy. But the Liberty, they're not listening. They're too busy acting like grandmasters, when really they're just flipping the chessboard in frustration. And here's the real cliffhanger. Who replaces Sandy? According to ESPN, New York might not even stick within the WNBA. They could dip into NBA assistant coaches, which, let's be honest, could either be genius or a disaster waiting to happen. Because yeah, nothing screams stability like handing a loaded veteran roster to a coach who's never set foot in a WNBA locker room. That's like tossing the keys to a Formula One car to someone who's only ever driven bumper cars. Reckless? Absolutely. But this is New York. We're talking about a franchise that lives for splash moves, even if they sink the ship. And here's the kicker, the irony in all of this. Sandy Brondello, she's not staying unemployed. Seattle has an opening. Expansion teams are circling. She's far too respected to be sitting on the sidelines for long, which means the Liberty didn't just lose a coach. They might have handed a rival a championship caliber leader on a silver platter. Imagine Sandy rolling into Seattle and stealing a title. That's the kind of revenge tour ESPN would feast on for months. Now, let's rewind to the numbers ESPN dropped. In 2022, the Liberty finished 16-20. Not pretty, but that was a rebuild year. In 2023, they exploded to 32-8 and made the finals. In 2024, another 32-8 season, this time with a championship to show for it. And in 2025, a 27-7 record, still elite, but injuries cut the legs out from under them in the first round. And that resume somehow gets you fired? Come on. Coaches with half that success get extensions, bonuses, maybe even statues outside the arena. That's why fans are furious, because this firing, it doesn't make basketball sense. The only way it makes sense is if you assume the Liberty's front office cares more about optics than wins. They want to be the glamour franchise, the face of the WNBA, the team that flexes its money and market power. But instead of building on stability, they've lit a match and tossed it into the locker room. And chaos. Chaos is rarely a winning strategy. Think about the message this sends. Players are supposed to trust management, believe the system works, that if you grind and deliver, you'll be rewarded. Instead, they just watch their coach, the same coach who led them to a title, get dumped like yesterday's news. That's not just shocking. That's demoralizing. And don't kid yourself, players notice. These are pros. They've been around long enough to know when the front office is playing politics instead of basketball. And the fans, they're not fooled either. ESPN showed it. Social media lit up with Liberty fans calling it betrayal, nonsense, even sabotage. Some fans said flat out they won't support the team until ownership changes. That's how badly this move has backfired. The Liberty thought they were making a bold statement. Instead, they alienated the very base that gave them credibility. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about Sandy Brondello. This is about how the WNBA handles success. Too often, the league undercuts itself. Instead of celebrating stability, it manufactures drama. Instead of letting stars coexist, it forces rivalries. And instead of building dynasties, it chases quick fixes. That's why this firing feels bigger than just one franchise. It's a warning sign. And that's exactly why ESPN's report landed like a bombshell. It exposed the truth. Sandy wasn't fired because she failed. She was fired because the Liberty front office wanted perfection, control, and a spotlight that never dims. And in chasing that spotlight, they may have just dimmed their own future. Because ESPN didn't frame this as a simple coach gets fired story. They framed it as a full-blown identity crisis. The Liberty are split between two worlds. On one side, the steady foundation Sandy Brondello built, And on the other, an impatient ownership desperate to look like an NBA super team. That clash finally boiled over, and Brondello paid the price. The irony? Her players still believed in her. Breanna Stewart, right after their playoff exit, went public saying they had Sandy's back. That wasn't just a soundbite. That was a superstar making it clear the locker room was still riding with their coach, even as the front office shoved her out the door. Yet management ignored it. And if you're Breanna Stewart, sitting on just a one-year deal, what does that say? It screams your voice doesn't matter. You wanted stability. They chose chaos. That door is now wide open for her to consider walking. And let's not pretend the rest of the league isn't watching. Coaches and players across the WNBA just saw what happened. A coach who delivered beyond expectations dumped because she didn't live up to some perfectionist fantasy. The message is loud and clear. Loyalty means nothing, and winning isn't enough. That absolutely weighs on free agents. Why would a top player trust New York when they know management will flip the script the second things aren't picture perfect? ESPN even pointed out the bigger truth. This wasn't just about losing in the playoffs. It was about power. The Liberty's ownership group has poured millions into branding, marketing, and facilities. They want to be the crown jewel of the WNBA. But with that money comes ego. They don't want a coach who gets credit for building a culture. They want the spotlight for themselves. And Sandy's very success threatened that narrative. That's why insiders are whispering her replacement could be an NBA assistant. Not because it's smart basketball, but because it looks bold. It grabs headlines. It fits New York's obsession with swagger. But here's the reality. Players don't care about bold hires. They care about trust, stability, and a coach who can guide them through the grind. Brondello had already proven she could. Whoever steps in now, they're walking into a minefield. And don't forget, expansion is coming. Seattle has an opening. 2 new franchises will need coaches. ESPN made it clear. Sandy Brondello will not be unemployed for long. If she takes one of those jobs and wins, the Liberty instantly become the clowns of the league. Firing her only to watch her raise another banner somewhere else. That's poetic justice fans would eat up. But here's the real kicker, and what ESPN hammered home. The Liberty just made themselves the headline for all the wrong reasons. Instead of celebrating the start of a dynasty, the Liberty are now stuck answering questions about dysfunction, overreach, and whether they even understand what a winning culture looks like. Fans aren't fooled. Players aren't fooled. And if the front office thinks they can spin this as some bold new vision, they're dead wrong. The WNBA is in a pivotal moment. Caitlin Clark's second year is breaking viewership records. New stars are rising. The league finally has momentum it hasn't seen in decades. And the last thing it needs is one of its premier franchises showing the world exactly how not to treat success. Make no mistake, Sandy Brondello wasn't fired because she failed. She was fired because she couldn't be controlled. And ESPN exposed every bit of that ugly truth. So here we are, a league watching its so-called model franchise implode over ego, a championship coach already being courted by rivals, and a fan base left wondering if the Liberty just sabotaged their own future for the sake of appearances. At the end of the day, Sandy Brondello gave New York history and still got tossed aside. Fans deserve better than boardroom politics dressed up as basketball decisions. Drop your thoughts below. Do you think the Liberty just made the biggest mistake in WNBA history? And don't forget to like and subscribe, because this story is just getting started.